it's Julian, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make Shlohmo. This one's been requested for a very long time now, so I figured it was about due time that I made it. And yeah, as usual, you can get the project file and samples from this video in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, make sure to check that because they will be available. And let's dive in. So the first sound I have here is this guitar, which sounds like this. So the way that I made this was by recording my own guitar, actually. I just played these two simple chords, A major 7 and E major 7. And then what I did was I took this little thing from the A major 7 chord, which actually happened accidentally. I just let go of the strings and that happened. And then I took it and I copied it and pasted it here at the end of the E major 7. So now it's kind of like... just kind of like a nice way to sort of like take something you record yourself and turn it into a sample or treat it like a sample. And it gives it like a little bit of a nicer rhythm now. Like it's just in half notes as opposed to like this sort of half notes and then whole notes thing that it was doing before. So then on the effects side of this sound, what I have is first I have this clean guitar amp. So this is a preset actually for Ableton's audio effect rack. You can get it under here. And yeah, it's just kind of a nice starting point with the guitar. The thing is, when you record a guitar straight into the computer, I'll show you here, it doesn't really sound that good. Like, yeah, you can hear it just sounds like very dry and kind of just like a clean guitar recorded into a computer. So having this on there, like using amp simulators like this is just a good way to kind of add that sort of like nice guitar sort of feel to it that we're all used to. So then after that, I have this low pass filter which sounds like this. And so you can hear what this is doing is it's just kind of taking out some of that high end and making it sound a little bit more sampled. And yeah, it just makes the whole thing a little bit smoother. The thing is also with these kind of beats, they tend, and especially with Shlohmo stuff, is like they tend to be a little bit darker and more kind of like lo-fi. So cutting off the super high end on sounds when you don't really need it, like in this case, can really help to achieve that. So the next thing I have here is this echo and this reverb, which are just adding a bit of space. You can hear a very small amount of the sort of like delay effect from the echo, and then obviously you can hear this is like a very long reverb that's adding a lot of space and ambience to the sound. And then finally, I just have this compressor side chaining it to the kick. So the next sound we have here is this bass, which sounds like this. And so the way that I made this was just with operator. It's just playing a very simple sine wave. I'll show you the notes really quick. It's just playing A and E, the root notes of the two chords that the guitar is playing. And yeah, like I said, it's just a sine wave and operator. Really nothing to it. And then I have that going into the saturator, and then a compressor side chaining to the kick. So most of the sound is happening here really with the saturator. Like what it's doing is it's adding a lot of high harmonic content to the sound and just, you know, beefing it up a bit and making it a little bit more powerful. The thing is that with Shlohmo's music, he tends to have kind of more simple basses like this, but he's very good at making them sort of fit into the really organic and kind of like textured world of his sounds. So yeah, so that's kind of the key with the saturator. Like if I could kind of just have this as like a sine wave. If you turn it up loud enough, it does work. But adding the saturator just makes this fit more into, like I said, the sonic world that we're sort of building with this song. Because it feels more analog and more organic and more warm. And then yeah, after that, like I said, compressor just side chaining it to the kick. So the next sound that we have here is this little beep, which is actually split into two things here, which sounds like this. So the key to the sound is it's all about sort of taking a sine wave and putting it into some reverb and then distorting it. So what I have here is, yeah, just a simple sine wave and operator. Really nothing else on it in there. And then that's going into this reverb here, which is pretty long, and the dry wet is, you know, pretty, yeah, it's pretty up there. I have it on 36%. And then, like I said, those two are going into this overdrive. So this is what gives this kind of like this like just sort of like overdriven texture. It's the reverb going into the overdrive. If we put the reverb after that, you still get that nice kind of like distorted sine wave bleep sound, but you don't get the nice distorted reverb that's like really blown out. So that's pretty much it for that sound. It's just those things, and then I have it going into a compressor, which starts changing to the kick. And then on the second one, yeah, same thing, just the sine wave. This one is actually a triangle wave. Triangle wave, which is going into a reverb, and then that's just going into this amp here. So yeah, just a little bit of a different kind of distortion on that one, and then I have a sidechain to the kick. And then with the notes, I'll also talk about those real quick. I mean, they're just pretty simple melodic things that fit nicely over these chords. And then you can hear a bit of variation there. Nothing really too crazy. It's pretty simple to write these kind of parts. And yeah, so those are the little bleeps. Then the next thing I'm going to show you here are the drums. So the first thing we have is the kick, which sounds like this. And so before I show you how I made this kick, I'll talk about the pattern a little bit because I think it's actually pretty important. I think the key here is to just have these kind of like very sparse kick patterns. Like, there's not a lot going on with the kick. It kind of just sort of serves almost like, I like to think of it as like a sort of like a bookmark almost. Like, it kind of lets you know in the beat where you're at. Like, it helps to transition through the different parts of the beat. And it just signifies like each new part essentially. So yeah, so that's definitely pretty important, like this very sparse kind of kick patterns. Now, the way that I made this kick was actually pretty simple. You can see I have no processing on it. What I started with was this. So I took kind of like a longer 808 kick, and then I put it into the simpler, and you can see what I did was I shortened it a bunch and then used this fade out. I also pitched it up +1. I guess that just sounded better. And then finally I put it through a low pass filter. So it's kind of similar to what I was saying with the guitar when I was saying like I put that through a low pass. It's like you can take out this like the really high highs of a lot of these kind of sounds with this style, because it kind of helps have them be a little bit darker. Like having this sort of darker, more round style kick, I feel like it's a much better fit for this than this. Which is cool, but it's a little bit too clicky, and yeah, I feel like the clickiness just doesn't really fit with this vibe. So that's the kick. The next thing that I have here is this hi-hat, which sounds like this. So the way that I made this was I just took a really simple kind of like, yeah, just like a short hi-hat sample, and I put it in here, and you can see I have two things going on. So I have the 16th note pattern going on up here, which is just kind of bouncing around and playing this sort of busy thing, and then I have these 8th note hi-hats going on down here. So those are doing like a more straightforward kind of like trap style pattern, and then we have these more busy hi-hats up here. So these just kind of like play off of each other. Like the 8th note hi-hats sort of like keep the beat, and then the 16th note hi-hats are more like percussion. Like they're just kind of there to be more of like the extra thing. I would think of this more as sort of like the 8th note one is like the chords, would be like the chords, and then the 16th note ones would be more like the melody, like more sort of accentuating the chords. So yeah, so that's the hi-hat. It's really nothing too crazy. It's just a simple hi-hat sample, and then it's just more about like what I did with the MIDI there. So the next thing we have here is this rim shot, which sounds like this. And yeah, nothing really too much to this one. It's just kind of like a punchy, sort of like powerful rim shot. And then what I have that going through is I have it going through this echo, which is doing 8th note, dotted 8th notes. So it's kind of got like a more of like a triplet kind of feel if you listen to it with the metronome. Like, or it's more kind of like, yeah, I guess sort of more like triplets or like 16 notes, or just not quite 8th notes. It has that like dotted 8th note kind of feel. And then after that, I just have a bit of reverb. The thing is, this is a very sparse sound. Like, it only plays once every 2 bars. So you can have a bit more echo on it and a bit more reverb and have it still kind of fit into the beat nicely without taking up too much space. So the next thing I have here is this tom, which sounds like this. So it's just kind of like a simple like drum machine style tom. Here's the original sample. So yeah, I just put that in a simpler, and then have it playing this thing where it goes from, just like jumps an octave. And then, so for processing on that, I have a bit of saturation. I just turned up the drive a bit. You can hear it distorts it a little bit and just gives it more of a lo-fi kind of feel. And then I have that going into a ping pong delay, which is doing eighth notes. And yeah, you can kind of hear that. The delay is a little bit more in the background for this one. It's almost kind of like a percussive layer on its own. Like, what I was going for was I just wanted to help glue this together with the other elements. And a good way to do that is with delay because, like I said, those repeats are very percussive with this one. And so they just kind of like add a bit of sort of interesting accent to the beat in the background. So the next thing I have here for the drums, and the last thing actually for the drums, is the snare, which sounds like this. So this is more meant to be kind of like a contrast to the rim shot. The way this beat sort of works is the first bar is the rim shot, and the second beat is like this reverbed out snare. So yeah, it's just kind of like a punchy, sort of like 808 style snare, and all I have on there is for processing. It's just this reverb, so the dry wet is set there, and it's got a pretty long decay time. Again, similar to what I was saying with the delay and the reverb on the rim shot, is like, since these sounds are so sparse and they're only happening once every 2 bars, you can have a lot more reverb and delay on them and have them still work. And yeah, I feel like that helps it sit over the beat really nicely. So then on the group here for the drums, I have just a very small amount of processing. I just have the saturator here, so you can see I have a ton of drive. The drive is at 21 dB, so yeah, definitely quite a bit there. And then I use the analog clip to sort of shape that. So here's what it sounds like. And if I turn this off, you can hear the drums are just really not as powerful sounding. Like, this is kind of a thing that I was having here, is that to get these drums to really fit into this style of music and have this kind of like more textured sound, you have to use a lot of saturation, because these drum machine sounds that I'm using just really don't have like that power and that girth to them. Yeah, they just don't really have it like otherwise. So that's kind of the key, is just get the drums in a group and then put some saturation and processing on the group, because it's going to help glue them all together. I say this a lot in like almost all my videos, but if you put processing on your master or on a group of sounds or anything like that, it's a really good way to help glue them together, because they're all going to get the same processing. So essentially, you're putting them all under the same sonic umbrella. So yeah, so that's the drums. And then the last thing I have here is the noise, which all together sounds like this. And so that's made up of 3 layers. The first layer is this vinyl noise, which sounds like this. So it's just like a nice kind of like vinyl noise sample. For processing on there, all I have is just this utility, first and foremost, which is just converting it to mono. This one had a little bit of weird stereo stuff. So yeah, just converted that to mono. And then I have that going into an EQ8, which is just cutting out the low end. It just kind of helps clean it up and ensures that it won't take up any space that the bass is trying to take up. And then finally, I just have a sidechain to the kick. Usually I wouldn't do this. Like, if you guys have seen my other tutorials where I do this technique, where I put noise in the background, I don't usually sidechain to the kick. But in this style, it's actually pretty important. With a lot of this kind of like lo-fi hip-hop / like trap kind of stuff, this tends to be done. And yeah, just kind of like make sure everything is ducking behind that kick and really gives it that sort of vibe. So the next one that we have is this cassette noise, which sounds like this. So it's pretty quiet, but this is the one that's mostly doing like the high highs. I've talked about this in my other tutorials, but a lot of times, like when you want to have these noises, like the vinyl noise, and this one, don't have like those really high highs, and so what can happen is it can end up sounding kind of weird. Like, it'll sound like it's missing something, and what it's missing is, like I said, just the really high end. So that's the point of this one. It just adds something in that range for the noise. So for processing on that, I just have a compressor sidechaining to the kick, and then I have an EQ8 cutting out the low end. So then finally, I have the street noise. So this sounds like this on its own. So the way that I made this one was I just took some nice kind of street noise I had recorded. I think this was actually like in a building or something. But yeah, so I recorded that, and then I put it in here, and what I have on it is just a bit of pretty simple processing. So the first thing I have is the EQ8, which is sort of like a bandpass kind of shape. You can hear it sounds like this. So this accomplishes two things. One, it cuts out the low end, so we don't have any low end clashing with the bass like I was saying with the other two. And then it also cuts out the very high end with this one. So this one, the high end, I don't know. I just wanted it to sound a little bit more lo-fi, so cutting out that high end kind of helped with that. And yeah, so then after that, I have this ping pong delay, which is doing quarter notes, and it's set like this. It sounds like this. So this is something I wouldn't usually do on noise, but I've heard this actually in a few of Shlohmo's tracks. I think he does this, like putting delay on your noise is kind of cool when you have something like this where it's got a lot of different sounds happening over time, and it's kind of constantly changing and evolving because you get like these little voices and stuff in there that get delayed, and it just obscures them that much more. Like, they're not necessarily going to sound so much like there's delay on them as they are going to just kind of sound like, yeah, like I said, just sort of a little bit more weird and a little bit more obscured. So that's the point of that. And then finally, I'm just having a compressor side chaining it to the kick. So that's it for the noises. It's just a matter of sort of layering together a few of them to get that kind of sound. So that's pretty much it for this one. I just wanted to make a quick Shlohmo tutorial, kind of showing you guys some techniques I picked up on. And yeah, so as usual, make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments, and make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. Once again, you can get the project file and samples from this video in the description. Thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.